Faith, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to have you on this platform. I've been looking forward to this conversation. And yeah, really excited about what we're going to talk about. You've had a very successful career, more so in a space that I think, women are a minority, and you seem to have forged a very successful path for your career. So really interested, to get into that, understand, what choices you've had to make, how did you identify opportunities, what made you get to where you are. But before we get there, just give us a sense of who is Faith.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. I hope somebody's going to hear my story. Like you said, it's just really us chatting about my journey. And I hope somebody's going to hear this story and say, you know what, I want to be like her. I want to have a successful career in the energy space because I believe it's possible. I've always believed in the possibilities. But in a form of introduction, my name is Noktula Faith Kajwa. Well, Mkajwa Mabukani.
Yes.
Mkajwa is my maiden name. So before I'm an engineer and an energy expert or climate change expert, I'm a mom of two. And more than anything, I love what I do. I'm very fortunate in that I get to do what I love. So, when you love something, it makes the challenging days and the challenging times easier to navigate. So I'm saying I'm fortunate in that regard. I was stubborn starting out my career in choosing this field particularly because it wasn't very popular at the time. I mean, back then, companies didn't have climate change departments. Yeah. There were no energy engineers, for example. So me going to I tend to be reserved, but I tend to be quite stubborn when I'm convinced about something. And I was fully convinced that this is where I need to be. But of course, I can't leave out the fact that somehow there were things that just sort of happened and the timing was just perfect. At one point, for example, I was supposed to have a mentor who had to be overseas for 3 months, and another mentor stood in when I was an engineer in training. And I believe that mentor shaped me somewhat in my earlier years to kind of, find myself here. So yeah, and I think that also mirrors just the story of my life in general. So if you look at my career and you look at my personal life, the ups and downs and the stories are very similar in that I make decisions that sometimes most people will think, why are you deciding to do that? And even in my career, it's been the same. And then literally, I work hard, I remain determined, and I leave the rest to God. I believe there's very little that I can do, and then God does the rest. Yeah. And that's really been my story throughout my life, whether it's my personal life, whether it's my career, it's just been absolutely like that. And some people call it luck. I wouldn't call it luck, but yeah, some people call it that. So in terms of my career and how I started, well, I studied engineering, electrical and electronic. Initially, I wasn't sure if you came to me when I was at varsity and asked me what I wanted to specialize in, I would have said automation. And I did dabble in automation for a while until I started questioning why everything is just using so much energy. And every now and then when I heard the term climate change and exploded, I'd look around and like we're doing the opposite things that we're supposed to be doing if we really want to tackle climate change. But of course, the senior engineers and the managers that were managing me at the time, like, no, that's not your job. You're here to do engineering projects. Just do that. And I suppose I was frustrating to other people as well. But in life, you will always find somebody who seems to understand you, who seems to get you. And sometimes you'll find a person who seems to be a little bit ahead of you. So when you speak, when you say something like, oh, wow, so this is what you've been thinking, and they give you an opportunity. So in my case, it's been a string of that. So for example, when I started out, I just started out as an EIT, couldn't wait to finish like everybody else. Some people take 18 months, some people, 2 years. And I think I was done with my program in about 12 months. And then I went on to work for ABB as a project manager for renewables. And at the time, there weren't a lot of projects. It sounded like prep work for me. And I remember thinking, what an opportunity that our country is missing out on. Why aren't we grabbing this and running with it? But of course, ABB was preparing because they knew that renewables had taken off in the rest of the world. And it was just a matter of time before it takes off in South Africa. And of course, that also gave me an opportunity to understand that climate change is not just about energy. It's about all the other resources, the natural resources that we have, that if we don't do something about, they will deplete, we're not going to be able to enjoy them. So it kind of gave me the opportunity to study that and understand where I really wanted to play. So by the time I went to ESCOM, I knew that's really what I wanted to do. And I had a power station manager who was passionate about it. But initially, it was not even his passion. It was more the challenges that we were facing at the time. We were facing being shut down because we didn't know how much emissions, how much we're emitting and how we're going to manage it. We didn't have a plan that we could share with the Department of Environmental Affairs at the time. And I was pulled in to come and do this project that I'm always talking about. They're like, okay, do something, install a gaseous monitoring equipment so you can tell us how much SOx and NOx, how bad we are doing, And so that's really how I ended up being a fully fledged, and what I call a fully fledged climate change energy efficiency specialist. And I got the support because everybody else started to support me because I got the support from the power station manager. And I was working for one of the oldest power stations. I was working in Hendrina. And then before you know it, was given the responsibility to look after the other older power stations. So the power stations that were brought back to service, like your Komati, your Arnott, and at the time it was called Production Portfolio 3, but they were all old with, age-related issues. So you can imagine where I was thrown. I didn't mind because I knew that ultimately it was good for me. The experience would be fantastic for me, even though I didn't know what my next step is going to be. And I think really just it's also a story of faith. It's not like I knew that guaranteed there'll be a climate change position in a company somewhere in South Africa. I didn't know that. So I did that work diligently as I possibly could. And ESCOM at the time were taking things very seriously. We had the environmental steering committee, we had the clean gas forums, which I was part of, and some of them I was heading. And if you are going to lead people and direct people, you must be the most knowledgeable. But also you must have the humility to say, I don't know when you don't know something. And that's the attitude I decided to adopt, to say, I'm going to work with people, they're from different backgrounds, different power stations. They're looking for answers that I may have and may not have. And it's okay to say, let me go find out for you. I don't know that. And I think that's another turning point for me, that when people start to see and respect you as this person who has the answers in a specific field, it's still okay to say, well, I'm not there yet. I can help you with 1, 2, 3, but 4, 5 is something I'm going to have to go look on and then get back to you. And then from there, I heard about this UNIDO, so the industrial leg of the UN. It's called the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, or the acronym UNIDO. They planting this very first amazing project, and they're looking into South Africa to plant it. And they were still, finalizing who's going to host it, how the funding was going to stream through, the structure, all of that. But much more on a high level than, so we're going to have training and what we're going to do every day, who we're going to hire. So it was still on a very high level. And when the ad came out, in the end, it was hosted by the CSIR. And when the ad came out, I saw I was probably one of the first people to apply. And I remember I had just had this surgery. I couldn't drive because I had surgery on both my feet. And a friend of mine, because I was still driving a manual car, a friend of mine borrowed me an automatic car just so I could make it to the interview in my slippers. And the first thing I did was apologize for the slippers, because upwards I dressed professionally like you would for any interview. So I get there and I tell them my plan, my aim. And I was in and out of it because when you've had a bone surgery, it's very painful. They keep you under strong medication. And I think for the next 3 days, I didn't take my meds because I wanted to prepare. But I was in so much pain as a result. But I said, I don't know what questions you're going to ask me, but give me an opportunity to tell you why you need me. You need me for this project, and this is why. And that's all I had prepared. And I don't know if they had additional questions, but it kind of moved from the technical aspect of things to, so when are you available to start working? So I think if you're talking about preparation versus meeting an opportunity, inherently, there weren't a lot of opportunities. And I knew that I'm not going to get a lot of these kind of opportunities. Yes, in future, I was hoping things would change. But at that time, I was like, you know what, this is my chance. And it would become one of my career highlight because it was a roller coaster ride. People think when you say you've had a successful career because it was smooth sailing. But it was anything, it was anything but smooth sailing. It was a learning lesson. At some point before we had a training department, we had to kind of prep because we had international trainers and I had to wake up in the morning and set up a table, put name tags and all of that and kind of adjust my blazer and then wait and read people. And they're like, okay, so this is Faith, So I had to play all this role. Afterwards, I had to play the admin role. But the project grew and we had a greater staff complement. And so did my career within the UNIDO space as well. I mean, we're getting funding from the Swiss Secretariat for Economic Development, from UK Aid, and of course the World Bank. So of course we couldn't fail, right? But we're also a pilot project, which you could say has its advantages, but it also has disadvantages because there's no template. Nobody has done it before. Mm-hmm. So you are told to do things a certain way that might not necessarily work. And you've got to be bold enough to say, you know what, maybe when you came up with this concept, it was good, but it's not going to work for South Africa. And that doesn't make you very popular as well. So I've had to navigate that, meaning I got to cut my teeth in the leadership role, which required me to step out, which is, I'm totally not like that. I'm okay in a corner doing what I need to do, what I'm passionate about. But this kind of forced me to be out there, to challenge other people, to say no, even when I knew that that's not what other person or the other people wanted to hear. But over time, this industrial energy efficiency project just became so big, and all the other new projects that were planted in other parts of the world came to learn from us. So we would host, National Cleaner Production Center from Egypt, Ghana. And as a result, I was also traveling a lot because of this work. Became a senior project manager and then became the lead project manager. And it was great. And towards the end, we won we got the most amazing recognition through winning the project of the year. And if you look at all the other climate change or energy efficiency projects globally, for a small project in South Africa to win that award was just a big nod for us. Yeah. So that's really my story in a nutshell. So I spent when I served my notice at NCPC, the day I resigned, it was my 10th year anniversary day at CSIR. Wow. And it was an amazing journey. And it was in a 10-year that I would say, what a drag. It didn't drag because, like I said, my job started out as one thing and ended up as something different. And I also got to grow in my roles as well. But it's different. I mean, one moment you're focusing on policy advocacy. The next moment you're helping a company tackle climate change issues or energy efficiency issues. The next day you are representing South Africa somewhere in some part of the world in the energy efficiency space as well, the climate change space. And one moment I'm trying to shape a new guideline at the Department of Environmental Affairs or Department of Energy. So my work was never boring and it changed shape all the time. But the impact of it, the gist of why that project was brought to South Africa has never changed. And I think that's why I remain committed to it through and through, and my passion just kind of grew with it. So in terms of, the connections halfway through, obviously you always get an offer. And it's funny that sometimes you would apply and then you get two offers at once. Which one do you choose? So I had a lot of those moments as well. At some point, in fact, I've got to admit, I left CSIR and then I went back because I realized 2-3 months down the line that this is not what I was looking for. It's not going where I want to go. And I went back. But my going back, it had to start with me saying, you know what, I made a wrong move, probably, stepped out too soon. Mm-hmm. So I had to admit that I made a mistake. So you make a lot of mistakes. And in my case, I kind of made a few mistakes. But in the end, I had to, like I said, I had to be very stubborn in what I wanted to do. Even if I didn't see it panning out the way that I wanted, I'd say, this is what I want to do now. And if it changes tomorrow, then so be it. I'm going to go with this. And so I was very convicted right from the start. So my story is a story of faith, story of resilience, and story of conviction, but also a journey of many pitfalls and amazing, amazing opportunities. I mean, most people want to travel the world, but they have to take time off work in order to travel the world. I saw the world thanks to this project. I got to interact with different countries, different people from different countries. I mean, one time I missed my flight flying to Mozambique, and I got there and everybody was just in a panic mode. And I figured, I'm just going to leave from the airport and go straight to the hotel. And literally when I got off, because I didn't know I had a driver, I was just going to, catch a cab there. And when I got there, there was this big board that said, Faith Nkaja, South African expert. So they were waiting, literally just, holding their breaths, waiting for me. And it's one of those things that make you realize just how much important what you do is. But it's one of those things that make you also remain humble, because it's a journey. It's not I haven't arrived yet, and in fact, I don't think I'm close to where I want to see myself yet.
Yeah.
But it's a journey that I plan on enjoying and plan on sharing with anyone who wants to listen. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. I love your spirit, and I think you've shared a whole lot there. There's a lot of stuff for us to still unpack. I love your UN story, the UNIDO, how you got there, because it's a classic example of what it means to, I suppose, exploit an opportunity, even create one, because you didn't have an excuse or make an excuse to say, I'm still in pain, I can't go. You literally pulled all stops to make sure that it happened. That is just so awesome. And of course, now you are the group head at Goldfields, group head of energy and climate change. You mentioned you've worked at ESCOM before, CSIR. I know you also lectured in some of our universities in the country. So you've done a whole lot. You've seen a lot. Now, in terms of what made you decide that this is the space for me, notwithstanding that it probably is filled with more male figures than female figures. How did that conviction come? I know you mentioned you were curious about the space, but how did you get to a position where you were comfortable that this is what I want to pursue?
Okay, so I think initially, just to go back a little bit, and as far as engineering is concerned, most people want to study mechanical engineering and specialize in something else. You always want to streamline and, sort of micro focus on that one thing. And I had a whole list of things. But at some point, I remember I think I was doing my final year. And between there, for the first time, I thought about it. And I was like, oh, okay. But there aren't a lot of opportunities. So I went with my second option, which is automation. So for the first year after graduating, I kind of worked in automation, and it wouldn't let go of me, that curiosity about what people do in energy, in climate change. And of course, we shouldn't forget that South Africa at the time was just grappling with availability. It was even before now we've got load shedding as a motivation. So there was no incentive for South Africa really to do anything in the space. But somehow I decided, you know what, I want to do this. And I think more than anything for me, the fact that you mentioned that there are lesser women than men, it kind of on its own was a drive. It was very lonely in engineering generally. There were fewer girls or women at the time, and there were more men. And when I zoomed even further to specifically the sector, I was like, okay, this is it. But yeah, I was like, you know what, this is what I want to do it. And at the time, I think it was also, we didn't have any South African case studies. I remember I would attend a few trainings, solar training here and there, and we're tackling climate change in a very high level way. Number one, like it was never going to be a reality for us. Number two, if we had come up with a case study, it would be some European case study. And I'm thinking, but they're already ahead of us in terms of solutions. So why are we using them as a case study instead of using us? So I think that push for me, naturally wanting to have solutions and wanting to show everyone that South Africa is sitting in this problem. We have a problem that I believe South Africans can solve. And I believe it's everybody's problem. Anybody who's had me speak knows that I always say climate change, energy is everybody's problem. It's not just for engineers, it's not just for climate change specialists, and we will need everybody's contribution. So that's always been my attitude. And I've always believed that if we tell our own story, if we design our own solutions, then our chances of success were higher than waiting for somebody else to bring us, a package solution and saying, just plug it. And in the end, we've wasted money and effort and it doesn't work. So I think my drive to be part of the solution more than anything, and my belief that South Africa we've got it in us to come up with this. All the problems that we face, we have the solutions for them. I was more convinced than ever. And of course, at the time, you couldn't have asked me to give you the solution in one sentence because I wasn't sure. But that conviction kind of helped me to say, well, if you don't believe there's a solution, I'm going to be part of it and I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
And it also speaks to some of the, like lecturing for me, it was not something that I dreamed of. I think I wanted to apply for this position and somebody said, you can't do it. That was fire in me. Like, you telling me that I can't do it. Why couldn't I do it? And I think my first lecturing position had a PhD requirement. I never wanted to do a PhD in engineering, and I told them in the interview, I said, you know what, at best I've tutored. I've never lectured, but I believe I can do this. And if you want to try me out, you can do that. But I don't intend to. At the time I was saying I want to have an MBA or an MBL. I don't have dreams of having a PhD. So somebody telling me that I couldn't do it kind of just gave me the drive. And I think the many people who gave me a negative answer, and the minute I started a climate change or an energy efficiency topic, kind of gave me that push to want to be part of the solution. So
I love how you seem to always use the closed doors, the disbelief or unbelief that people may have around your ability, and turn them into an energy you can use, to forge ahead. And I know you are very passionate about women in this energy space and advancing, I guess their presence in the sector. How did you manage to gain that respect in this field? You've mentioned a number of things. You said sometimes you come across as arrogant if you are very convinced. Was that some of the things that helped you really stand out in the midst of a male-crowded sector?
Well, that was a tough one. And that on its own is a journey, because at first I just figured I'll be one of the boys. So I would stop wearing heels when I went to work, I'd want to be one of the boys in every sense of the word. So in terms of, technically, I knew that I could do what they could do, but you still get ignored and it's not easy. So I just want to blend in and just do the work so that when somebody says, who did this? And it's like, oh, it's Faith. It's not a big deal, But eventually, as I grew, I realized that, I'm never going to convince anybody with that regard. Let me forge my own path rather and allow people to see my work for what it is. And if that earns me some respect, then I've achieved my goal. So I've kind of changed. I've evolved from just wanting to be one of the boys to saying, I'm me. I like to wear heels sometimes. I want to wear sneakers sometimes. I'm very feminine and I enjoy my feminine side. Let me kind of be feminine and still be great at what I do. And at some point I kind of switched. I said, I'm going to be feminine. I'm going to take a chance and, still excel in my work. And I think that kind of worked for me because the first one worked for a while and my attitude change worked for me. But it's funny because in engineering, there were fewer women. And as I explored and got really involved in the energy space, I realized you'd attend a training and in some training sessions, there wasn't even a single woman, or there'll be one or two. Sometimes there'll be one and it'll be me, So it was very lonely. And I realized that this cannot be. I've always assumed that there were more women. And I started speaking to women, the few women that I would meet, bump into through the South African Energy Efficiency Confederation. I'd say, but why is it just a few of us? And that have the same questions and would agree that this cannot happen any longer. But in that, we also had to, kind of kill a few stereotypes and myths. in that everybody believed for a woman to make a meaningful impact in the energy sector, you've got to be an engineer or you've got to have a technical background. That is not the case. We need journalists, we need communicators, we need accountants, we need everyone, like I said. So we had to start there to say, you want to have a career in the energy sector, it doesn't matter what your background is. If you want to make a contribution, you are passionate, you are capable, then come. And we started networks, we started, through Safi, we started mentorships at varsity, because we realized that, okay, we're having mentorship sessions for women who are already, halfway through their careers, or they knew, but they could have made this choice sooner. And when you make a choice sooner, as you know, you prepare for it. We can warn them of the pitfalls. We could cushion them. We could support them. We could get them ready. And so we kind of toned down our mentorship programs to university level, postgrad, undergrad. And we said, not just engineering students, not just science students. We want everybody. If you want to have a career in energy, then everybody should come. And in the end, that's how I kind of gained confidence. But I never stopped learning as well. I realized that what you know today is not going to be enough for tomorrow's problems. So even now, I've never stopped learning, and I will continue to learn. But more so, I'm in a very strategic position that so much so that whatever the solutions are available for today, they're not going to be sufficient for tomorrow. And it's always changing. The impact of climate change, now we were able to put some science behind it and measure it. And we can come up with some of the strategies and put them in place to make sure that we tackle it properly. But the solutions are just evolving as well. So the minute you relax and you stop learning and you stop understanding and you stop being curious, you also miss an opportunity to kind of make a contribution. And I think that is much more important for women, because the fewer women that are here, they really need to be shiny and bright examples for the rest of the women. And for me, at some point in that path, and after I changed my mind about, well, I'm not going to blend in and be one of the boys, I kind of felt like, I should have done this a long time ago. I should have been myself a long time ago, because it came naturally to me. And I gained respect from my peers. I gained, whether they were men or women, I gained respect from some of the senior people that I was working with. I got men to say, do you need a mentor? I can mentor you. And I got women to say, I'm looking for a mentor. Can you please mentor me? So it's that kind of reception that I received made me feel like it's best to just be yourself. So the adage of just being yourself as a best option it's true everywhere. I couldn't keep up, acting like a boy, acting like a man. Yeah. But the minute I became myself, things kind of worked out almost on their own.
That's beautiful. I love that, the authenticity. And you mentioned mentorship a couple of times, and I know in some of the articles that I've read about you, you ascribe part of your success to people who took interest in you in terms of mentoring you. Can you tell us about those mentoring experiences? What was it about the mentoring that you got that helped you in your career?
Number one, I just want to mention that my mentoring is not always formalized. When you are an EIT, they assign you a mentor, somebody who's going to make sure that you do your project, you do your work properly. Yeah. Sort of an overseer, somebody who will sign off on your project, give you the necessary support, send you off to training, that kind of thing. So that was my first opportunity to have a mentor. And it's funny because somebody said, this guy's not going to teach you anything, and there was also some racist remarks there. But, like I said, I was convinced that I could learn a thing or two. And, to this day, I still believe you can learn from everyone, even people who are not standing there and intentionally teaching you anything. You can learn something from them. Mm-hmm. People who are just being there negative to you, you can learn something from them. Yeah. So that was my attitude. And this guy, if anything, I observed him. And he had a few questions for me. So I want somebody with a strong math background, and I want somebody with a good attitude. I was like, I don't know what good attitude is, but I'm just going to be myself once again. And he said, do you really want to learn? I said, yeah. And I think at the end of the day, he had a big whiteboard in my office. I had this big, it was in an old building, and I had this big office that I was told it'll be yours temporarily. So he installed this whiteboard. And every morning, whenever we dealt with project, he'd always come and break it down for me in that whiteboard. And I was scribbling away. Every time I had an opportunity to be in a meeting, either with the project team or with him, I was just scribbling away. And of course, he was always standing there writing stuff on the board. And I figured if he's going to take time to write stuff on the board, I'll take time to learn them. And I learned that some of the things that I knew and understood were a bit more high level. And I said, so if I want to learn this, he said, oh, this is learning in a technical college. And I'm like, okay, can I attend some of these courses because they were offered in a company? And he said, you sure? I said, yeah. So I had to kind of, tone down my expectations as well and go learn so that I could have a better understanding, not just from an engineering level, but from a much lower level. And he was dedicated. He was, he was protective even of me. And so that was really the first time I said, you know what, I thank God that he sent this man, because I couldn't have chosen him. In face value, I wouldn't have made the same choice. He happened to me and I probably happened to him. But what he's instilled in my life, I still use to this day, Yeah. And he made me stop and question if I could do the same for somebody else. But if you look at my career at ESCOM, both transmission and generation, there was a formal mentorship program. So there was a young professional program. And if you, I think it was under the age of 30, and you had a degree, first few years of working, you'd be part of this formal program, and then you'd get a senior. If you're an engineer, you get a senior engineer, and this person is going to be your mentor. So it's much more formalized and structured. So I've had that opportunity as well. And then you fast forward to my time with UNIDO at the CSIR. There was a leader, my first boss. He was just so amazing. He was a true leader. I used to envision leaders, not managers. And up till that point, I had this guy who was a leader. It's almost as if he was born to lead. He didn't have to be pushy about it. He didn't have to be forceful about it. He didn't have to disrespect or make people feel small about it. He would serve, do his part, and be as giving as possible. And I remember thinking, I'm going to observe this, and I want to be that kind of a leader. And for me, we didn't strike a deal. I didn't ask him to be my mentor, but I watched him and I observed how he addressed people around him, how he tackled challenges, how he was so protective of the team. And I learned a lot from him as well. And my former leader is a friend of mine now, the great Alf Hudson-Berg. I mean, he was just so amazing. He's tall, very knowledgeable, years and years of experience in industry. He's run his own businesses, he's worked for corporate. And when he stands on the stage, he's intimidating. So imagine I get to work with him, and then I get to report to him. And one day we're both speaking in this platform. He goes in first, goes up to the stage and introduces himself. And he says, I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Faith. And he has this wonderful things. He says these wonderful things about me. And I was stuck on the friend and colleague because, hey, where I come from, a knowledgeable person like that, a figure like that, will introduce you as a subordinate and a co-worker, Yeah. But he calls me a friend. And I think when you do something like that for a Black girl in a career where she feels she doesn't fit in, when she's not sure what's going to happen tomorrow, you're giving her the necessary confidence. He treated me like I was an equal, even though I didn't feel like an equal. And a few years later, I said, can you please mentor me? It was for the first time I asked somebody to mentor me. I said, yes, I will. And to this day, he still gives me great advice. We still chat about life. We still chat about energy. We still chat about climate change. He's in retirement, but he's still working, and he still tells me, we still share about what's happening in the world of climate change. And I think I just wanted to highlight the forms of mentorship. It doesn't have to be a formalized thing, but nonetheless, they've all had tremendous impact in my life. Yeah. And some of them to this day are still having that impact in my life. So that's my story with mentorship. And when I was given, looking back at my very first mentor, I made a mental note. It took me a long time to actually implement this, but I made a mental note to say, given an opportunity one day, I want to mentor somebody. Well, I was always nervous about what I knew, so I didn't know how, how that was going to work out. I just figured, hey, if I'm given something, I ought to give it to somebody, right? To whom much is given, much is expected. So
Yeah.
if there's somebody who wants to be mentored, I'm going to make sure that I make the time for it.
Yeah.
And my opportunity came when I was at UNIDO. I'm having these wonderful opportunities, and I see people who come through struggling would be on a drive to invite women, and they'd come once and they'd never return. Or they'd come and we don't see them in real world actually making money and implementing the knowledge that we instilled in them. But I swear 90% of the men who'd come through, the very next day they're on our supplier database, they're doing the work, they're getting paid for it. And I'm still trying to navigate how to give back to these women. And I believe they have potential. I believe they've got the skills. I believe they can make a difference. And one of the ladies that I invite comes through to me and says, Faith, I've been working on environmental projects for a while. Now I just want to, brush off on my technical expertise in as far as energy is concerned. Can you please help me? I said, yeah, attend this training, attend this session. We're going to have this session with women, and she attends all of that. And I said, when you're ready, come back to me. She comes back to me and she says, Faith, I'm ready for my first project. You don't even have to pay me. And I was shocked because you shortchanging yourself. This woman had put so much effort into this. She's worked so hard in this. And finally, she's confident enough to carry out the work on it. We even partnered her with a mentor who was a male, by the way, because I'm just trying to say that some men are willing to give back. And finally, she's ready to do the work. And she says, oh, by the way, you don't have to pay me. I said, why not? You have a team that you're paying. You'll be having sleepless nights making sure that you finish this project on time. Why shouldn't we pay you? And if it was, no man has ever said that to me. A man could come in today, some of them come to one training and they want me to contract them and they want to be paid. So I realized that the psychological issues that really make us feel less confident as women are much deeper than I could possibly understand on my own. And that's why when we started Safi, one of the big things that we still do to this day is mentorship. I realized that you could be 30 years old, be in the industry for 10 years, mentorship will go a long way. So it was because of my own experience and the experience of others that I was in touch with that I decided mentorship is crucial. So we don't want women who can do the work and say, well, because they come up with some sort of an excuse and say, you don't have to pay me. No, if a man is getting paid because he's capable, then I believe a woman should get paid because they're capable as well.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it.
Absolutely. It's amazing how we forget sometimes that we are raised by women when we get to the workplace, right? And people start to have different ideas about women's capability. But far be it from us. I love that, that story you just shared. You spoke about leadership and that you had this ideal picture of what a leader is. And at some point in time, that person came into your world. Can you share some thoughts with us around leadership? What is an ideal, if there's anything like that, an ideal picture of an exceptional leader? What is it about that person that stands out?
Like I said, for the first time, I saw somebody who, number one, he wouldn't ask you to do something that he wouldn't do himself. Okay. So when you talk about leadership in service, leaders who serve, he personified that for me. He would do things that I'm like, my manager would send me to do that, or a former manager would send me to do that. He would never do that. So he would do all of that. He respected everyone. And if you think about listening to a person, he would have these conversations with us individually. And I remember at first I thought, well, you know what? I'm probably his favorite. And I found out later that he actually treats everybody like that. It's not just me. He would listen and say, so what do you want to do with your career? And I would dream because, I would just talk about things and I'd look things up and would say, okay, do you know if there are such courses in South Africa or anywhere? I'd be like, you know what, they're in Germany. And he would say, go look them up, check the prices so you can attend them. So that's the kind of person he was. But also he wasn't afraid of letting you shine. he'd always say, well, this is your time. I'm not gonna, because at first they would say, you have to go and represent Unil. I'm like, no, but my boss should do it. He'd say, no, Faith, I'm here to lead the project. You are here to actually do it. So he'd share the spotlight. Sometimes we'd just give you all of the spotlight. And he would just be there making sure that you succeed in every way possible. So you get the spotlight, but he will also make sure that you don't fall while the spotlight is on you. And I thought these are amazing qualities. He was there to listen, number one. He was there to compliment. He was there to support. And even when he disagreed with you, it wasn't nasty. He would say, you know what, Faith, I know I allow you to dream and bring me ideas, but I don't know if that's going to work. And he'd even tell you why he thinks it's not going to work, and leave the ball in your court to prove him otherwise, So you'd think disagreements have to be nasty, but they don't have to be nasty, So he created this conducive environment for you to come up with brilliant ideas, stupid ideas that might work, might not work, but you felt comfort in the fact that he would still listen to each one of those ideas, and he would think about them. He would ask you more questions, and he was not dismissive. And I think what happens is that managers are usually either they micromanage, usually very quick to dismiss because, well, no, this is not what we do. Here, this is what we do, and this is how we do it. So they're not open to listening to a junior's idea, So I think he was different in that. But I think for me, the biggest thing is the fact that he walked the talk, and he wouldn't ask you to do something he wouldn't do. I mean, I thought that's an admirable quality. How do you know it's going to work? It's because he's done it. And, I still try and do some of the things that I've learned from him. And I realize now they're not so easy, You've got to have a certain amount of humility to allow a junior to implement their idea, even when you have reservations, or to allow somebody to question you. You can't question some of these leaders. And he says, if you questioning me is going to help you understand better, then so be it. But he does so in the most diplomatic way as well. He's taught me that we can disagree and still be respectful. You can completely not take what I'm saying, but let's be respectful about it. So I think for me that is really a very good example of the kind of leadership I thought of, plus some. It's somebody that you would feel you don't have to worry about calling on Monday morning and say, you know what, I have this problem, because he's not going to say, oh yeah, but we have this board meeting, or we have this, so you have to be here. He's very understanding, he's very sympathetic, but also is very supportive. I think the other thing I once asked him to write me, I said, I'm looking for people who my references. He says, well, if you want, I can do that for you. I said, are you sure you can do that? But I'm going to leave. And he said, Faith, you came from somewhere. I also came from somewhere. At some point, you're going to have to go somewhere. Wow. And I just hope that what I've instilled in you here is going to help you get there. I was just taken aback once again. So that's it's the kind of person that he was. That's why I felt I'm going to learn from that kind of leadership, and I want to be that kind of a leader. I know that sometimes we want things, but you try and implement, and the environment is a bit restrictive. So you can't do it all. But I think I have my peak in terms of the kind of things I want to be. Obviously, some of it will be, it has to be part of your character. If you're generally not a humble person, you may struggle with humility choices, for example. But yeah, I think I'd say 90% of what I've observed, I am implementing, not just at work, but also in my daily lives, in my daily life, and at Safi, at the ISO technical committee as well. So it's shaping everything that I do, and it's shaping the person that I am whenever I'm required to lead.
Fantastic. I'm just reflecting also back on some of the comments you made earlier, around your journey so far. And you spoke of determination, drive, humility. You call it arrogance. I'd like to call it conviction and confidence, which informed part of your success to date. I'm curious to know, where did that come from? How did that get instilled in you? Does it have anything to do with your upbringing? Is it just how you are naturally wired? Can you just share some thoughts with us on that?
Well, I think it's both, a bit of both. Um, my upbringing, obviously, you'd know that. I want to start with my grandfather, not just my mother. You know, our grandfather. He was a man who spoke his mind, number one, but who almost dreamt on his behalf. I think I look back and I remember a comment that he made. He had a lot of daughters, and he would say, whatever it is that you want to do, mine is to support you. So if you don't want to get married, but you want to have a career, I'll support that. Now, this is an old man, and at the time, most old men, their pride came from having daughters who got married, whether they were educated or not. If they had successful marriages, that's all that would make them proud. And hearing my grandfather say that, it opened something in me. It kind of gave me the freedom to look what I want to be. I figured, do I want to get married? Do I want to have a career? But it gave me the freedom and the light to look within myself and decide for myself, knowing that I'm going to have that kind of backing. He's not here today, but it still gave me the confidence. And if you look at my mom is somebody, it's funny because I have a love-hate story about this. I hated being at the market where my mother was working, but I loved it because it was, what else do you do when you're not serving customers? You dream, right? So it was my it was my field. You know, I had hours and hours of dreaming. So I like that. It was an opportunity just for me to close my eyes and see. Number one thing I knew I didn't want to be is find myself in the same position as my mom. I was determined. It's like, I don't want to be here because you're young, you're a teen, and there are boys who are passing comments and people just looking down on you, which really didn't bother me, by the way. And most people think, oh, it really didn't bother me. But I knew I didn't want to find myself there. And the question was, where do you want to find yourself? You know, so in my dreaming, I would literally remove myself from there and see myself somewhere else. And sometimes where I saw myself, it wasn't 100% clear. And I think looking back now, it's okay, as long as it was not there. And my mom has always had the determination. She would pray as if, and she'd had this prayer session Wednesday, Friday. She would pray for something. And before it happened, she started thanking God for it. And I thought, she's onto something. And she'd always ask me, like when I was 15, I matriculated when I was 16, and she'd like, what do you want to do? And she would hint, she'd ask me, but then she'd hint as well. She'd say, I went to meet with my lawyer. She was so young and she was so good and she was so helpful. What a sweet child. And I'm like, you want me to be a lawyer? And she said, oh, I saw this program on TV. I saw some pilots. And I'm like, do you want me to be a pilot? You know, because at the same time, I suppose there was a little girl in me who wanted to please my mom. And with the confidence that my grandfather instilled in me and gave me, I wanted to explore and just see what could become of my life at the same time. Yeah. And my mother would say, no, I was just saying, but you must do whatever you want to do. So in the end, I decided, you know what, maybe there's a way I could blend making my mom proud, getting out of here, this marketplace, being, you know, some people call it being a hawker, and making sure that I take what my grandfather gave me, which looking back, it's not enough. I should have had a lot of conversations with my grandfather, you know. So at some point I had to balance that and just decide. And I think the stubborn part comes from that every time I look around, there was something else. And I could have changed my mind every day. There was an opportunity certainly to change my mind. But the stubbornness came from that, knowing that whether my grandfather, if he was still here today, he would still be proud of me. Whatever happens in my life, if it's what I wanted to do, he'd be supportive. That gave me confidence. Being able to take care of mama and being able to get out from where I said I want to, you know, get out of, I figured this is going to give me the opportunity to do that. I get to get out, I get to make money. And of course, I had my own selfish ambitions, like seeing the world. But of course, when I made that decision, I thought they'll pay me money and then I get to travel. I didn't know that I'd have a job that will require me to travel the world. So So, I think God has a way of just hearing all our prayers and just making sure that He makes a path based on your wants, your needs, your dreams, your ambitions. And if you continue to put the hard work, you continue to put the effort, somehow in the midst of this mixture of things and the chaos, the path just becomes apparent and obvious, and it's easier to follow. So I think for me, in terms of my upbringing, is that, and in terms of the confidence that I get throughout my life, I'm from a family of very strong female figures. So, my aunts don't back down, and they have their own strength. And it's certainly different from my own strength, but I do take from them as well, in that if I want to do something, I will go for it and I will do it. I watched your mom decide to become a teacher later on in life instead of becoming a nurse, which is a path she had already started. I admired that so much about her. But generally speaking, the females, our mothers are very strong people, and I draw from them in terms of inspiration. And there's no way you can be anything but strong if you're from that family. But I think the one thing that stays with me is my grandfather's words, that probably if another old man was to hear him, it wouldn't have made him very popular, But he said it. And to this day, it still moves me. And my mother's determination, my mother was praying for something and thanking God as though it happened when it hasn't happened, because to her, by faith, it had already happened. God was going to do it. It was just a matter of time. I figured, why waste this opportunity if whatever I want, I will get if I have faith. So for me, it was just that. It still works for me to this day, by the way.
Yeah. Awesome,
Yeah.
fantastic. As we wrap up, you've mentioned your passion for traveling, and that you've obviously now have had the opportunity to travel the world. Can you talk to us about some of the fascinating places you've been to? How was it? Just give us some, take us there with you.
Yeah. Oh, I think one of my earlier trips when I joined the CSIR, I joined in 2011. In April, I had to start traveling. So I had to spend some time in Sweden, and everyone can speak English there, including the kids in preschool. They learn English. For me, that was just fascinating. And I met a female energy manager there who said, I was given zero budget. So I was given the job and the title, but zero budget to save energy. And she took me through her factory and showed me how she did it. And I thought, wow, this is just so amazing. And I've also learned that the Scandinavians are just some of the sweetest, nicest people, They say when you travel, you get to know yourself better. You don't get to just know the places. And I think it kind of relaxed me a little bit, because I thought, oh, what are they going to think of me? I was shocked that everybody thought I was American, though. It's like, why is everybody American? Like, no, I'm South African. Some of the places that I've always wanted, I've been to Germany a lot because I ended up registering for a course there. So I had to go there for summer school, spring school, etc. I fell in love with Berlin. I mean, I remember telling my colleague, I said, in Berlin, everybody walks with a sense of purpose. They don't just stroll, they look like they're all going somewhere. And to this day, I love Berlin. When I went to Mozambique for the first time, we didn't have a translator, so I had to teach in English and somebody translate to Portuguese. We didn't have a translator, and I decided, well, how many people can speak Tonga in this group? And I think 80% of the people could speak Tonga. So I was teaching in English. I was, giving this training course in English and Tonga, and it was amazing because there was a queue of people who wanted to ask me questions after the training session. So, I travel these places and everyone has a different story. I went to Ghana one time just to have some meeting. I think I spent 2 weeks there. On my way back, so my boss was going to go to Nigeria and then come back to Ghana. But I had to come back to South Africa because we had a team from Yale University. So I had to be there that Monday. So Saturday, I fly out. And my boss, for some reason, says, I'm going to travel to Ghana. But instead of coming back on Monday, I need to come back on Sunday. And I don't know what happened. My suitcase, it locks with numbers. I locked my suitcase. I still need to check into a hotel so that we can sleep and travel the next day. For some reason, I can't remember. I didn't take a picture. I can't remember the pin. And so we're standing there waiting for my driver. And this Ghanaian drivers can see that we're struggling with the suitcase. And before you knew it, there was a queue of people. Everybody just wanted to try it out without knowing the background of the story. The taxi drivers, the Uber drivers, everybody just said, okay, can we try? I said, maybe you can get me some pliers so that we can open it. But the generosity of the people, for me, it was just moving.
Yeah.
I fly to Dubai, spend 2 days in Dubai, do work. I don't have the time to take in, Dubai like most people. And then I fly to China immediately, where I'm expected to work on a Sunday. So I land Saturday night, not even night, like 1 o'clock in the morning. Sunday, I attend one of the first, it was the ISO work. So I represent South Africa in the ISO technical committee. So we write and revise standards. I deal with the energy standard. There are people who do safety and other standards as well. So we're expected to work on Sunday. I get there, I work. And usually whenever I travel, there are churches where you can walk in freely. And if it's a service, you join the service. If it's just praying, you pray there and you leave. And as I walk back home, that around 3 in the afternoon, I realized I haven't seen a church in China. And it just hit me that I can't go to church. I'm in a different country. I mean, even in countries where it's not mainly Christians, there are churches that you can walk into, whether it's a traditional church, or it's a charismatic church, there is a church somewhere. I don't find a church. And I decide to walk back because it's not very far from my hotel, right? I walk back to the hotel where we were meeting, and because there were people that were familiar. And as I walk up, maybe 2 floors, I could hear, the songs that we used to sing in Hillsongs, in His People. And something just grabbed me, and I followed just the sound. I didn't know what was happening there. I decided, I'm going to join them later. Let me just follow the sound. So I followed the sound. I get there. In the hotel, they label the boardrooms, different size boardrooms, who's there. So they'll say ISO TC 301 meeting, closed meeting, open meeting, that type of thing. So on that board, they said church service, and then they said booked between 3 and 5. And it just hit me that I'm in a country where you won't find a church and walk to it freely. And if you're going to book for it, you will need to pay for it. And you have a set time. It's got to be between 3 and 5. You go over, you have to pay extra or get kicked out, depending on whether there's a booking or not. And it just hit me that this is the country I'm at. Even though I'm here to work, I had a thirst to just join somebody who's worshiping because it's Sunday, right? And the Chinese are nice people, bless them, but churches in China, there aren't a lot of them. And when I opened that door, it was youth. I don't know how they paid for it, but it was a bunch of youth playing music and praying and worshiping there. And for me, it was like, wow, this is the world we live in. But overall, I could tell stories of my travels, but I think overall, my travels have been very pleasant. Some not so much. I've always wanted to go to Switzerland. I've been there twice. The first time was in summer, so there wasn't much to do. The second time, bad experience. But, so there are countries that I've always wanted to go. When I go there, it's disappointing. But I'd say 98% of the countries that I've always wanted to visit, when I visit, the experience is always pleasant. Yeah. In Africa, I've never been disappointed. Well, I couldn't have a meeting in Nigeria at the airport because of the noise.
They're passionate.
They're passionate and they don't raise hands. If you're in a meeting, you think you're making a point, they just come across. And I thought, while I have 3 hours to kill, I'll have a meeting. No, it wasn't possible. I couldn't have a meeting at a Nigerian airport because of the noise. So, yeah, but overall, I think I've gotten to know myself in the process. You know what you can do. You know how far your limits can be stretched when you travel. And even the nuances, when you stay at home, you see a world from a different perspective. But when you travel, you get to see firsthand how other people live, how they treat strangers, and also how you would react to it, because you could think, if somebody did this to me, I'd react in this way. But it's not true until you actually get to experience it. that you would know this is how I would react to it. And I didn't mind when the Chinese were touching my hair, for example. And I had braids and they'll say, can I please touch? For me, it was not offensive. It was more curiosity on their side. Yeah. And the touch, they say it's beautiful and walk away. So, but things like those, before it happened, I used to think, oh, that is so funny. Why would you want to touch somebody's hair? But when it happened to me, I really didn't mind. And I realized that as people who have more in common, maybe it's the space, because when I travel, it's all about energy, it's all about climate change solutions. We have a common problem. And the sooner we put our heads together and make sure that we personalize the solution to fit us, the better. So it's not just a matter of copy paste. If it worked for Russia, good. Let's see what worked for Russia and take what we can use and leave the rest. If it worked for some parts of Europe, this is not Europe. We've got other challenges, but we also have some good things as well. Let's take what we can, use it and leave the rest. We don't have to copy paste. And in terms of capability and respect, I've learned that in South Africa, we've got people that the world over has come to respect. And the world is certainly watching. So we sit here and we load shed and we go for 5 days and we have blackouts and we have strikes. We don't realize that the world is watching, but the world is watching. It's the only thing that we can't control is how they understand it. But if we in a position to control it and tell our own story, then we're in a better position to make them understand the reality of what's going on, because they observe and interpret. Sometimes they misinterpret. Yeah. So I think, what I've learned in my travels is exactly that. The world is watching. We are more than capable, and the challenges that we have here, others have worse or even lesser challenges, but we all have some sort of a challenge. But one of the most common ones right now is climate change.
Fantastic. I've really enjoyed this conversation and I've learned a lot as well. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your wisdom. Last question. What is your next big chapter?
I'm trying to think. I've only joined Goldfields in March and I've given myself some time. I can't share with you now, but I'm trying to decide whether to study further. And I think it's a given. I am going to study further. It's beyond studying further what I'm going to do. Yeah. But I'd love to spend a bit more time, a few more years possibly at Goldfields. As you know, we've got a huge operation, not just in South Africa, but in 5 different countries. So it's a lot to get around. But I've given myself a mental limit. And hopefully my next step will be to, I don't know, it'll probably be to get another role, probably a strategic role as well. I'd also want an opportunity to give back. That is also, if you don't believe in that is also even in my internal plan. So even at work, I have this plan to sort of break it down and make, because I know when you say climate change, it can be intimidating for people and they think certain people can understand and help out. So I want to break it down even further to say, you are an electrician. This is what you need to understand about climate change. This is what you can do as well in response to the challenges that we're experiencing. Yeah. And I'm from Limpopo, so I think we have ample opportunities for renewable energy. And I'm hoping that will be my next focus on my next chapter. When, I'm not sure. Yeah. And early retirement, yes. Early retirement. I don't know. So when I retire early, I'll only focus on the projects in Limpopo. So definitely, I've always wanted to retire early. And I'm nearing 40. So we don't know what's going to happen beyond 40.
Awesome. Well, you still look 25, so don't worry.
So I'll work beyond retirement. Yeah. So I have a lot of plans. So I don't know. God help me to get clarity, but also connect with some of the people who have the same visions and dreams. But for Limpopo, I really want to an opportunity to give back and do something amazing there in terms of renewable energy. We graduate and we don't get to work there. We don't get to give back there. So for me, that'll be the opportunity of a lifetime. It's just a question of when. I don't know when I'm going to be able to do that, but I believe someday I'll be able to do that. Just focus on developing the renewable energy, specifically in Limpopo.
Awesome, Faith. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I would love to continue chatting, but you've shared a whole lot, Ro. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you so much.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And I hope somebody's going to hear this and say, I want to be in that space. I want to be in that sector. I want to be part of the solution, because we have a lot of energy and climate change challenges. And if one person does it, then this was worth it.